Hi everyone, Alexandra Joe at Jupiter Returns here with your weekly astrology forecast for the week of the 15th to the 21st of February 2021. I hope you're all safe and well. Probably you're beginning to feel an increasing tension within as we approach this week. We're moving into a peak week in the astrology of 2021, courtesy of the first of three square aspects that are taking place between the planet Saturn up there in the fixed sign of Aquarius, in square aspect to Uranus down here in the fixed sign of Taurus. So I'll just put that aspect line on there. Still very crowded in Aquarius, as you can see. So there's a lot going on there. So with the introduction this week, I really want to go deep into this this square, deeper than perhaps many others, just to really invite us to explore, the ways that this can play out. We are, as I've moved into this recording, I just caught on the news a headline. It was from Boris Johnson, who has stated today, this couldn't be a better kind of wording of the energy we're in. Cautious but irreversible progress. So that's the strap line of kind of the Prime Minister's view on things today. So how does that relate? Well, Uranus is all about progress, as is Aquarius. It's the sign that it rules. It's all about moving into the future, making progress, moving forward. But Saturn's saying we need to do this cautiously, pragmatically, and with the fixed signs here, that idea of, as he has put it, irreversible progress. I think everyone appreciates that we're now at the point where we can't just keep doing this choppy changey in and out of lockdown thing. I think that he's very much aware that the tolerance has worn thin. This is Saturn is saying, the tolerance to be able to continue to cope with the pressures of lockdown and all of the restrictions and challenges that it's bringing into our life. I don't think you would get people to go back in, if we open up too quickly, kind of thing is my interpretation of what he's saying. So what he's saying is, we've got to get this right. We've got to strategize, because when we make the change, when we increase the freedom, when we open things back up, and when we look towards our future, we need to be able to do that in a way that actually allows us to make some progress unhindered. So that was quite perfect. So what's this Saturn Uranus stuff all about then? Think of Uranus in a challenging aspect to Saturn here, a little bit like a teenager, okay? Uranus is like the rebellious teenager. He's benefited from the Saturnian support and structure of his parents all of his life, but he now needs to create some independence. He needs to individuate. He needs to explore who he is outside of the restraints and the influence of the authority of the parents. Okay, it's like, I need to find who I am, and the only way that I can do that is to go out there on my own, make my own way, make my own life, have some progress, and learn about who I am in order to become, to individuate, which is what Uranus is all about. Who am I as an individual person? And of course, so we have to have that level of freedom. So there's this point that we all get to in life where, there's potentially a resistance of the parents to allow that freedom. It can feel very challenging, because obviously there's pros and cons to young people moving into adulthood, and the risks and you know, shocks that can happen as a result of perhaps doing that too quickly or doing that without enough kind of responsibility, some of these Saturnian qualities, so that we go through this period of like a challenge of trying to bring into kind of a happy medium, like collaborate these two energies that are very, very distinctly different. Saturn wants things to stay the same. Saturn likes things that endure and last a long time. Whereas Uranus is all about, oh God, that's so boring and stuffy and old. Like, we need to move forward. We need to do things differently. You know, it keeps pushing us forward as a species to progress, you know, to become better and better and better. So we're in a period of the Uranus-Saturn cycle now, which is a very, very challenging time. It's where these two energies are at loggerheads, essentially. So I want to do in the introduction today, just talk to you about the cycle of these two planets. So you may be familiar with the lunar cycle, the moon cycle. Each month, the moon comes together with the sun and starts a whole new cycle. We have challenging parts of that cycle when she comes into square the moon, and then when she opposes the sun, and then when she squares again before coming into another new moon. So these are the peak moments of each cycle, and the planets have those cycles to each other as well, all right? So the cycle between the moon and the sun takes 1 month. The cycle between Uranus and Saturn takes around about 45 years. So it's around about 45 years since we've been in this specific kind of energy. There's a square between Saturn and Uranus. If you're interested in this topic and you've done some reading around it or watching other YouTube videos and what have you, you may recognize that there's a square aspect between Uranus and Saturn every 22 years, but not all squares are the same. So that's another thing that I'm hopefully going to teach you today. So essentially, the cycle that we are in right now with regards to the Uranus-Saturn square is a cycle that began, if I just find the right place in my notes. Okay, so the current cycle started back in around about February 1988. And what we had Saturn and Uranus coming together, this conjunction. A little bit like the great conjunction we had towards the beginning of this calendar year at the solstice between Saturn and Jupiter, all right? Two big planets coming together. So this was taking place on the cusp of Sagittarius and Capricorn. It was like the very last minutes even of Sagittarius and moving into Capricorn. So that's where the whole thing was started. I've had a look and there's some fantastic websites out there if you're interested in studying these cycles and patterns of how themes repeat within our lives as individuals and also as a collective. But I'm going to try and give some examples that we can follow through now. So this was, whenever we have a beginning, we have an ending as well. And a peak thing that was kind of happening at this time was the Iran-Iraq war came to a close at this time. But one of the things that I really wanted to tap us into is that this resumed the US Space Shuttle program, all right, at this time. There'd been the Challenger disaster. Many of us, if you're old enough, will remember this awful event that took place. And so nothing had happened for about 3 years after this disaster. But it was when Saturn and Uranus came together. So Saturn rules structures, material, solid objects, and Uranus rules space. Okay, so this is the theme that I'm going to try and follow. with this particular cycle. So the US Space Shuttle program resumes after this long break because of this prior disaster. And there is the launching of the Space Shuttle Discovery, which couldn't be a more Uranian theme if it tried, really, could it? And a new NASA satellite. So it's kind of like setting the scene. It's like, right, we've got over the hurdles. We're going to start. We're going to do the space discovery thing again. So then we fast forward about 10 years and we get to the first quarter square. So similar to the lunar cycles that you may be familiar with if you work with me doing moon dialers. The first quarter square then of these guys took place sort of straddling 1999 and the year 2000. So of course we had the whole millennium thing going on there with all of those themes. So this was taking place at 20 degrees of Taurus and Aquarius. So this one is probably just that little bit more kind of relevant to the energies now, because these are the signs that are involved, but flipped over. So we've got Saturn in Taurus this time and Uranus in Aquarius. 20 degrees this was taking place. And at this time, interesting repeating themes. We had Bill Clinton being impeached. We had George Bush winning an election, but the vote count was disputed. So the results of that election were delayed until that process had been gone through. So we can see the clear kind of repeat theme there in US politics. Other things that were relevant, I think, particularly with Taurus being the ruler of finances, with our food systems, these are areas that we're going to see this kind of a situation playing out, the kind of basic fundamental resources of life. We had the euro introduced across 11 countries at this time. We had blockades at oil refineries. There was this big crisis over the cost of fuel. And also we had mad cow disease running rampant throughout the UK. So really affecting our food supply, but also drawing our attention to our methods of farming and the safety of our Saturn in Taurus, the safety of our food systems, our food production systems. So similar themes, but with regards to just continuing that space theme, at this time we had the first crew on the International Space Station. So a huge amount of progress from the conjunction, and now it's really taking form. We've got the International Space Station with actual people up there doing stuff. So then we move into the opposition. All right. And with the opposition, we've got, so like with the full moon, we've got Saturn and Uranus in opposition to each other. Yeah, this is, I'm just going to take that off because it's kind of confusing. So this is like the full moon of that phase, essentially, of this cycle, essentially. This is where matters that were birthed at the new moon really come to bear fruit, come to kind of come to a head, come to a peak moment of, yeah, this is kind of the results of what we've been developing, like a culmination point. So this opposition took place in 2010. And we had a really deep financial crisis at that time. If you can think back to that, we were coming off the back of the subprime housing crisis, and unemployment was super high. There was a huge recession, a global recession in actual fact. We had the Affordable Care Act introduced by Barack Obama in the US. It was revolutionizing, the access to healthcare is one of these basic fundamental resources of life. That was a huge thing in American history. And continuing the space theme, we had the SpaceX launching what was called Dragon capsule. So this is essentially like the first transportation method of getting astronauts to and from the International Space Station, and also private individuals as well, if they're wealthy enough, could actually start to embark upon space travel. And so again, we're seeing the increasing influence of SpaceX and Elon Musk. You know, these types of very Uranian characters, very futuristic characters. In fact, he has his North Node and his Mars in Aquarius. So he's very much about, you know, progress, and very excited and very kind of powerfully aiming at kind of space, literally, and even Mars, literally. So another kind of poignant moment there, essentially, in terms of what we're dealing with. So that brings us up to now. We've got Uranus in Taurus, as I said, Saturn in Aquarius. So this is another square aspect, but this, of course, is the last quarter square. So that first square aspect was a waxing square. So it's almost like when the moon's going from new moon to full moon, it's growing, it's building up to something. This square, however, is the waning square. So this is the like the last quarter square of the moon cycle, where it's the crisis of integration. So this is where we have to, we're at a choice point where essentially we're at a crossroads, essentially. And what it's saying is we have the benefit of being able to now look back on what we have achieved so far, with the structures and formations of society and the collective that we have produced since the original conjunction back in 88. And we're at this decision point where we now have to decide, okay, what do we keep? You know, what's coming with us as we move towards a new cycle beginning? And what do we leave behind? What can we establish, decipher, discern that has been a good thing for us, and what really has turned out to be a bad idea? You know, Uranus and Aquarius are all about ideas. They're all about concepts, you know, genius inventions. And people come up with wonderful ideas all the time, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to come up with something that actually stands the test of time. So this is that point where we have to establish, you know, the progress that we've made in these areas of life. Are they something that are actually we've found to be very supportive going forwards, or perhaps they've just been disruptive, or perhaps there's been an element also of they've been put to use in ways that go against the ethics and morals of a fair and equal society. I think that's a big part of what we're now dealing with. So if we look at the last time that we were in this, excuse me, I'm going to sneeze. Bless me. If we look at the last time that we were in this exact aspect, then to the last quarter square of the previous Uranus-Saturn cycle, this was back in 1978. All right, so we look at the themes of what were happening in 1978. Really interesting themes about equality, about, you know, progressing out of the stale, old, traditional ways of doing things. And one of the beautiful things that I recognized was this was the first time that the rainbow flag, the LGBT flag that we're kind of all really familiar with these days, this was the first time that it was introduced and flown as a symbol of equality back in San Francisco. So I found that really interesting. It was also the first female astronauts being put into space, and this coincided with NASA discovering the traces, the signatures, the evidence of life on Venus. So isn't that a beautiful kind of symbology going alongside the fact that we have now females in space as well? Also, it was the first test tube baby was born. So, you know, we associate scientific breakthroughs with Uranian energy. But again, we have to consider there, around that time, there was this real kind of clash of the ethics and morals of society. Is this the right thing to do? Should we be, interfering in nature in this way? Should science be kind of playing God, essentially? That was a really, really hot topic around that time. And we can see similarities there, can't we? And talking of playing God, this was also the time of the Jonestown massacre. Really, really awful event where this commune of people, Aquarius, basically were convinced to all commit suicide, spontaneously commit suicide, basically at the hands of this guy, Jim Jones, because he was coming under such powerful scrutiny, and the authorities were starting to say, ask questions about what is it exactly that you're doing here in this alternative community. So again, we can see those themes of the Uranian, Saturnian energies kind of having a fight. So I just thought that would be helpful, rather than me sitting here just talking about the usual stuff that lots of other astrologers are talking about. I hope just having a look at the cycle and the repeating patterns has helped to kind of enrich your understanding of the themes that are playing out here, and maybe identify where we're moving around and coming back round, because we really are at this choice point now of making a profound decision, both in our individual lives and in our collective lives, in the social sphere, of where do we go from here? And I think everyone can really feel that, but we can also feel the tension, the conflict between, the serious, heavy, right, responsible things that ask us to be mature. Saturn's asking us to really be mature and sensible and think long term. And Uranus is just kind of egging us to say, God, we can't tolerate this anymore. There has to be a change. We have to break out of some of the limitations and restrictions, both in this crisis situation, this immediate provocation, but also in the wider pattern, the wider cycle of these two planets and what they're trying to do, how they're trying to shape our lives. So this is the backdrop essentially for this week. I hope that's an interesting introduction, if nothing else. So let's go through then into this week. We are starting today, Monday, the 15th, and we have the moon in Aries. Okay, so we had this wonderful new moon in Aquarius last week. She's now growing in strength as she's waxing throughout the week. She's now in Aries, and what this means is that as she progresses through the sign of Aries, she's just the other side of Chiron actually as I speak. As she progresses through Aries, this is fire. This is like saying, come on, let's make something happen. Let's get passionate about, that new start that we created, those seeds that we planted at the new moon. Let's individually, personally, Aries, me, let's make something happen. She's gonna sextile each one of all of these planets that are in Aquarius one by one. So Monday has this very busy kind of feel to it. It has this lots of different tastes. It's like a buffet of different planetary influences that are all finding us in a harmonious way if we choose to engage with them. Essentially, that's what the sextile is all about. So first she sextiles Saturn, then she sextiles Mercury retrograde, then she sextiles Jupiter, then she sextiles Venus. So very, very stimulating, lots of different flavors going on there. But essentially it's activating our individual participation in what's taking place. This Aquarian stuff is just so powerful. We're taking our first steps with the Saturn Jupiter cycle that began here, such an important conjunction there, this brand new cycle between Saturn and Jupiter that began at the winter solstice. And so we're really kind of seeding that moment in time now with all of these planets in Aquarius. It's like saying, you know, this is what is going to last. This is what's going to endure. This is the impression that is being left on that starting point. Those very, very early influences in the new life that we created at that time. As we move into the evening today, Saturn will arrive at 7 degrees of Aquarius. And that's really important because that's the degree where the exact square between them takes place. So we're really, really now pulling into that Saturn Uranus vibe of what's the right thing to do? How do I get the balance between progress and the future and doing things differently compared with, you know, holding on to something that's old, that offers some stability, potentially some security, that kind of thing. I think what we're really, really feeling is Saturn, wherever Aquarius is in your chart, Saturn is applying a lot of weight right now. He's really, really heavy. He's crushing almost any sense of forward movement. It's a restrictive, heavy, big fat old energy that just feels like it's sat on your chest. You know, Aquarius is an air sign. You know, it relates to our breathing, our breath work, and it feels like we've got some heavy weight like pushing down on our chest, stopping us being able to breathe freely, which we need to do in order to oxygenate the whole body, which is Taurus, so that we can work. You know, Taurus is the efforts that we make. It's the practical ways that we show up in life that produce the resources of life that we need. And so we feel like we can't do that. I can't move forward. I can't, you know, work because of this heavy weight. The reason for that weight is to stop us moving too fast, which Uranus can have a habit of doing. It can be very sudden energy when it finds us sometimes, quite shocking, quite disruptive. It's trying to get us to strategize, to take a cautious, reserved approach. Boring, I know, but hey. And that's in order to stop us just, you know, going crazy. You know, remember the teenager. If we just say, oh, okay, you're a teenager now, off you pop, you can do anything you want, it's probably not a good idea. So Saturn's trying to remind us that we do need to apply some maturity to our considerations here of how we move forward. But Saturn's really stress testing this area of our life to show up the cracks, to show up the weaknesses, because he wants to build our resilience. And this is so, so, so important. I can't tell you how important this is. Saturn is going to spend the next 2 years laying the foundation stones in Aquarius so that when Pluto has finished this long, powerful journey through Capricorn and ingresses Aquarius just as Saturn's finishing the work there, this is the big stuff. This is the stuff, when we're looking at the future and we're looking at our progress, this is really what it's all about. Pluto moving into Aquarius in 2023. So the foundation stones that we are laying, the tarmac that we're putting down, it has to be really solid. It has to be strong. So Saturn's going through here now and saying, okay, let's put everything under pressure and see if it can hold, see if it can stand up to what it's going to need to stand up to if we're really going to bring about the profound transformations that Pluto could potentially bring us when it moves into Aquarius. So you're probably really feeling Saturn. I'm feeling Saturn. I'm really feeling Saturn. It's very, very challenging energy. It's making everything feel so slowed down, so challenging, so draining. but it's pushing us to find, you know, resources within ourselves of endurance, of maturity, of resilience. You know, it's pushing us to find our resilience, because we're going to need those tools that we're developing through this square are going to stand us in good stead as we move forward. Saturn's building confidence, all right, and it's not in the process of developing confidence that you benefit from it, right? We have to go through the challenges, the setbacks to our confidence in order to garner more. And then it's afterwards when we look back on that situation and we go, well, it was horrible, but I'm really, really glad I got through it, because I've proved something to myself. I've proved that I can do it. And if that aspect of myself or my life hadn't been challenged, then I wouldn't have that strength. All right, I wouldn't have that strength. So essentially, I've gone off on a tangent. It's not like me, is it? But yeah, that's what we've got kind of flaring up with the moon in Aries, is really kind of saying, come on, I've got to do my part in this, and really activating us and stimulating us. So the Saturn Uranus square, they're now at the same degree as each other, really tuning us into that whole vibe. Tuesday, the 16th of February. Tuesday is ruled by Mars. We still have the moon in a Mars-ruled sign, Aries. And what we also have now building is another square. We've got applying now within a 3-degree orb at this point, pardon me, Venus over there in Aquarius is building into a square aspect with Mars. So the moon in a Mars sign is kind of helping to tap us into the Mars vibe on a Mars-ruled day. These two are kind of forming a battle which will perfect later in the week. But again, this is going to play a part in kind of stimulating the tension that we're going to be feeling as we move throughout the week. So how can this play out? Well, these are personal planets and more likely to show up in your personal life, and specifically in your relationship, like romantic relationships and connections. It can be quite nice, because these are very primal sexual planets. You know, we've got Venus and Mars, the divine masculine and feminine. So when these two are in a provocative aspect like this, there can be actually quite an increase in passions and libido and a desire to get sexy. So you could feel it in that way. Lucky you if you can. It can, you know, if there's disharmony kind of in the background in relationships, though, it can provoke that to the surface. You know, Mars really wanting what I want. It's all about the ego and getting its own needs, whereas Venus is more about balance and compromise. So the tension there that you can see between the two is building. So relationship disharmony can be provoked. There can be financial challenges here. You know, Venus ruling money and finances, Mars creating a square here. If that's aspecting another planet or point in your own personal astrology, in your own chart, you could, or if these are falling in financial houses for you, there might be a challenge around finances or food resources as well. Disagreements just in general, you know, this is Mars doesn't really feel agreeable like this. Mars is just like, you know, screw you, I want what I want. Attacks on our values or worth. I think that's going to be a really important thing, and I'll talk a little bit more about that when this aspect goes perfect, when it peaks at the end of the week. But yeah, so I expect some tension within relationships with that aspect building as a continuing theme throughout the week. What have we got then? Yeah, so overnight then into Wednesday the 17th. So we now have the moon coming into Taurus. This is really important. So this is when the peak events from with regards to that Saturn Uranus square really, this is where I think that we'll really start to see stuff, because the moon is now washing it up to the surface, washing that energy up to the collective surface, essentially, with the moon ruling the public. And we're really going to start seeing these events. And she's really tuning our emotions in as she gets closer and closer and closer to Uranus. So the other thing to bear in mind that we have going on this day is that the sun in Aquarius reaches a critical degree of the sign. It's the 29th degree. That's the very final degree, and it's a more powerful degree of any sign. Because it's almost like where the sun says, look, I've been bringing attention. I've been putting the spotlight on Aquarius for the last 29 days. And I've only got one more day to do what I needed to do here, which is draw our attention into this area of life. So it's almost like, okay, the deadline is just, over the horizon. The deadline of the work that the sun set out to do here is very close, and it's kind of almost like it's almost like that planet, the sun here, is kind of thinking, have I got everything done? What do I need to do quickly before I move on into a different sign and move my essence elsewhere? So there can be almost like a provocation of bringing matters to a culmination point, bringing matters to a conclusion in that sign. So way more attention then to Aquarius, again, right as the moon is applying to Aquarius's ruler, Uranus there. So a really powerful day on Wednesday. And as we move through the day then at 7 p.m, that's UK time, the Uranus-Saturn square actually peaks. So as the moon throughout the day gets closer and closer and closer and closer to Uranus, Uranus and Saturn are really moving into the perfection of that square aspect. So Wednesday really is the peak day that we're going to be dealing with. So hold on to your hats, keep grounded, keep calm, keep breathing. Try and fill your lungs with air, and don't succumb to, the moon is going to make this a flashpoint. This energy is going to be pervasive throughout the whole of this year, but this will be a flashpoint, and the moon crossing over is going to make it even more so. But the moon moves quickly, she'll move on again. So don't do anything rash or hasty, essentially, as she conjuncts Uranus. And expect that this will be a peak moment in terms of these kinds of events that we're anticipating with the Uranus-Saturn kind of conflict here of trying to establish the way forward in a structured, sensible, practical way that can last and endure. Moving then on to Thursday the 18th of February. This is Jupiter's day, and it's interesting because now we have, with the sun having finished up the work in Aquarius, sun ingresses into a Jupiter sign, Jupiter being the co-ruler of Pisces, and Pisces season begins. So happy birthday to any fellow Pisceans out there. Much love. You have a special place in my heart. So the sun ingress into Pisces essentially is beginning the last and final 30-day chapter of the previous solar cycle. So if you've worked with me on understanding the natural wheel of the year, the pagan wheel of the year, with the solstices and equinoxes, then you'll be familiar with the idea of the vernal equinox, the start of a new solar year, taking place when the sun ingresses Aries, all right? Which is going to be 30 days from this point when the sun ingresses Pisces. So that starts a new solar year. And so we've gone all the way round since the last spring equinox, and we're now in the very last month of that previous cycle. So this is really all about, with Pisces, it's really all about bringing things to a close, wrapping things up, ending things, bringing things to a completion, and saying, you know, what belonged to that previous solar cycle now needs to be left there. But deeper than that, it needs to be very powerfully integrated into our connection with our spiritual life, with our connection to source, whatever that is for you. It's very different for everybody. Sun in Pisces is a time of greater solitude, a greater need to retreat from life, just to kind of really go deep and process the last remnants of that cycle in terms of how it's going to shape and affect our soul, be that individual and also collective with Pisces, to really give some meditation and contemplation, which are very kind of Piscean things, just to really meditate on what we've experienced collectively in the last 11 months, and decide what the real meaning of that is. Essentially, you know, Pisces Neptune energy is all about how we create meaning. It's like, what's the point? Essentially, Neptune asks these questions like, we're not just here to go through the motions in a linear way and then die. There is a greater meaning, there's greater purpose to our experience as a human being, something that transcends that individual incarnated experience as a human being, something that's infinite, something that goes beyond and that will continue on past this lifetime. So it's Pisces season that we really get into that energy, essentially. So don't be surprised if this is a time when you really do feel like you just need to, whoops, hold on. My microphone's gone wonky. So don't be surprised if this is a time when you really do feel like you need to retreat and just take advantage perhaps of where life has slowed down, the opportunity within the lockdown perhaps to take away some of the distractions of life, as many of what we get engaged in our day-to-day lives actually are. They essentially are just distractions that are taking us out of ourselves. Well, with the sun in Pisces, we go back into the deeper realms of ourselves. We withdraw from everything that's going on out there in terms of the kind of material physical world, and we're more in tune with the way that we are spiritually connected to each other. And our attention is drawn to, you know, what our part is in that kind of matrix, that web of connection to everybody else. And they're really important considerations at this time. So Thursday, we have the sun ingressing Pisces. We also then have the moon will meet up with Mars in Taurus. So again, that's going to be flaring up the square aspect between Mars and Venus. So let's talk a little bit more about that. You know, with Sun in Pisces, the emphasis is taken away from self. Pisces is is said to be the sign with the least ego. It's the furthest removed from ego, which is more Aries territory. With Aries, we're primarily concerned with what I need, what I'm going to do, what's relevant to me. Whereas with Pisces, we've gone all the way round and we've always almost come back on that. And so this is the furthest removed from me. This is all about, you know, the greater good. It's about compassion. It's about, you know, spiritual life. And, you know, when we have this square going on here, Mars is in Venus's sign, right? Mars, because Venus rules Taurus, Mars over here, he's not comfortable in Taurus at all. She's pretty much okay in Aquarius, to be perfectly honest. It's not a particularly good place. It's not a bad place. It's just kind of neutral. So essentially, I think that she has the upper hand here in this square, because Mars wants to operate on behalf of himself. And Venus here in Aquarius is tapping us into collective values. It's tapping us into, you know, the importance, the value, the beauty of being part of community. How does that support us in terms of the resources we're able to access that we wouldn't if we were just isolated? How does it bring more beauty, more art, more just all of the Venusian qualities? She's really tapping us into how we access those via community, via tribe, via networks of people, bringing people together. And Mars over here doesn't do so well in Taurus because that's Venus's territory, and he wants to kind of work on behalf of what he wants alone. So he's coming into conflict with that. And it's kind of like saying, well, you know, you're going to have to work on behalf of these things a little bit, in actual fact. You can't just have whatever you want. You can't just be concerned with your own needs, wants, desires, pleasures, whatever. Actually, it's kind of forcing Mars to behave in a way that takes greater account of how our individual actions play into the group. And this is a really big theme, I think, of the Saturn Uranus square, you know, that we're experiencing as we reach that crossroads point that I talked about in the introduction. You know, what's my place in the collective? What do I add to it? Social change. We're going through this drastic time of profound awareness of the need to make a lasting social change. Saturn Uranus square. And, you know, we are the building blocks, Saturn. We are each individual within the tribe, each link of the chain, you know, is really important and really relevant, because that's what creates the collective. Each individual person, each act that and behavior that individual takes is what is creating and shaping society. We can't just do the cop out and say it's all the fault of the authorities, it's all the fault of the millionaires, it's all the fault of someone outside of ourselves. It's time to take a bit of personal responsibility and say, how have I contributed to this? Or how have I even just enabled this? And be the change, as I keep coming back to this year. It's about, you know, you have to, Mars doesn't really want to, but Mars needs to learn to act on behalf of the collective here with this energy that's coming along. We also have, towards the end of Thursday, the Mercury is really, really slowing down now. So his influence is really, really strong at this time as well, slowing down to station direct, currently in retrograde. So this is where we could experience a greater influence from Mercury retrograde as well. So having a rethink, you know, going back over things, I think that's really, really helpful energy for us at this time, just to really draw us into these considerations and contemplations of the individual place within the collective society. Friday the 19th then is, of course, Venus's day, and this is where the square between Mars and Venus goes exact. So this is taking place at 23 degrees. So Mars at 23 degrees of Taurus, Venus at 23 degrees of Aquarius. Where do they fall in your chart? Are they within a fairly close pairing with any planets or angles that you have? If so, then you're more likely to experience this kind of disruptive, challenging kind of energy between the wants of the individual and how that shows up in relationship and compromise with others. Venus, all about that balance and compromise. So that energy peaks today. And you know, what we also have today is we're going to have the first degree, the first quarter square aspect of the current lunar cycle. So we had that powerful new moon taking place in Aquarius a week ago. And this is where we get to the square aspect between the moon and the sun. This is taking place at the very first degree of Gemini. So moon at the beginning of Gemini, sun at the beginning of Pisces, so the mutable signs. Mutable signs is all about change. It's all about saying, yeah, something really does need to move and change here. So this constant feeling of the challenge about bringing change into being really is captured by the energy of this moment in time as well. It's the first quarter square, so it's the waxing square, so it's the crisis of manifestation, that feeling of what the seeds that I sowed at the new moon, those desires, those wishes of wanting to create something, wanting to bring something into being and create something. This is that challenge that says, okay, well, we'll see how much you really want it. We'll throw a hurdle, a challenge to see if you're really dedicated to that or not. Can you walk the talk? Can you actually live and breathe in a practical way the ideas and concepts that were formulated in Aquarius? So this is really going to put it to the test. So I think with both of those aspects going on, then we can really anticipate a challenging day on Friday as well, unfortunately. But again, this is fast moving energy as the moon moves quickly. And it's an opportunity to just to reconfirm to ourselves, yeah, I'm not going to be dissuaded. I'm not going to be thrown off course. I'm really freaking serious about this. I'm serious about the issues that I want to create. I'm really serious about the future that I'm a part of creating, you know, whether you have children, grandchildren or not. You know, we are just moving through, we're just tenants, we're just renting our space here on this planet, and we will move along and leave this place behind for someone else to come along. What state do we want to leave it in? You know, these are the questions that we need to be asking ourselves. And if that's something that you really, really care about, and I think, you know, with Venus and Aquarius right now, this is really going to help us to establish that. And the sun in Pisces, like allowing us, of helping us to think about other people, then really this provocation is something that you could just use to say, no, I'm real. I'm going to get real with this, and I'm going to move this forwards. But there could be challenges, you know, there really could be. I can't play that down. So Saturday the 20th then, as the moon continues her journey into Gemini, as she deepens, what's going to happen is similar to the beginning of the week. We started off with the moon back there in Aries making sextiles to each of the planets in Aquarius. This is like a continuation on that theme. Now, being in fellow air sign Gemini, she's going to trine each one of these planets in turn as she moves through Gemini, which is absolutely beautiful. She's also going to meet up with the North Node, her own North Node. This is the lunar North Node. Quite an important time, quite a powerful time, because the lunar North Node is also stationing at that time as well, stationing to go direct. So very, very powerful. So as these two come together, the moon with her own North Node, that North Node of destiny, that North Node is where we are headed, being easily and supportively, harmoniously influenced by the energies of each of these planets as she goes past. When she meets up with the North Node, it's going to be Jupiter. It's going to be the planet Jupiter that is most profoundly connected to this. Jupiter being the ruler of Pisces and Sagittarius. Actually, we better change that one too. South Node up there in Sag. So this is so much hope. This is all of that incredible. Yes, it can be idealism, but hey, we need some of that right now. We need some hope. We need some optimism. And Jupiter has that in bucket loads. What it also has is the ability to create opportunities. So where we've been engaging with the process of this particular moon cycle and the other cycles that are going on that I've explained, Jupiter is really saying, okay, let me open some doors for you. Let me present you with some opportunities that now you've proved yourself kind of that you really are serious about, you know, the ideas and ambitions that and wishes and hopes that you set at the new moon. Let me see if I can create some opportunities for that to come into being and actually be a part of your future. So that's a really, really exciting energy, I think. We've also got Mercury really, really, really slowing down now. And in fact, as we move into Sunday, the 21st, Mercury will actually station direct. So it's kind of overnight between Saturday, the 20th and Sunday, the 21st. And essentially, Mercury is stationing direct. So really, really powerful influence. If you've been engaged with this cycle, you will know that Mercury has now got back to 11 degrees of Aquarius. This is the place in our charts and therefore in our lives that Mercury was last at January the 15th. So it's retracing the steps that were beginning in January the 15th. So Mercury has now retrograded back over everything that happened between then and now, and is now kind of saying, okay, I've had another look. I've reconsidered things. We've re-gone over things. Any changes that needed to be brought into our attention are now, they've got our awareness, they've grabbed our mental sphere. And we can now start to move forward with those, putting the pieces into place. It doesn't necessarily even mean that a change needed to occur, although quite often that is the case. It's essentially just saying, just reconsider, have another look at things. And the perfect example is the impeachment trial of Donald Trump. You know, we had the presidential election results during that time, and you know, that was argued. He's come up against trial. All of that's been kind of gone back over, had another look at, and now Mercury's moving forward and it's saying, okay, you know, we've had the opportunity to reconsider, and anything as a result of that now kind of falls into place. What you can see now is a relatively rare occurrence where absolutely every single planet is now gold. That means everything's moving forward. There isn't any retrograde energy at all as of Sunday. So that really, really captures the energy of moving into our future, of making progress, of starting to go forwards. perhaps something that will build up more as we've complete the journey with the sun going through Pisces there, and approaching that restart point again at the vernal equinox. But yeah, it's really saying, okay, we can start to, it's the energy, it's the beginnings of going forward. So really use this week, if you can, to just consider what that means for you in the context of the past, in the context of the prior cycles and evidences that we have of just saying, you know, looking back on the progress that we've made since 1988, when the Saturn Uranus cycle was begun. What are the bits that we want to hang on to, and what are the bits that we want to let go of? I think we're going to experience issues, particularly around finances and around food production, but particularly around climate. And that's a real fundamental Saturn issue that we're going to have to address. And we're at a point now where it's at the surface. It can't be ignored anymore. We cannot just carry on as normal, go back to normal, do the things we've always done. We can't do that Saturn stuff. We have to make a change, Uranus. We have to progress beyond this old kind of idea that the world, the environment, Taurus, is just something that we can exploit for our own material accomplishments, which is something that Saturn's heavily associated with. Like, we've really got to move beyond that stuff and into this collective idea of actually, you know, what's going to happen if we don't really tackle this. And that's going to push us to take individual action, to have to make some personal sacrifices. Yep, Saturn's going to take some things away from us to try and show us, you know, every time we've gone into lockdown, we've witnessed the natural world healing itself. Just this week, there was reports of the ozone layer repairing itself. We keep being shown the consequences, the karma, Saturn, the consequences of our conduct, Mars, Taurus. And it really is a crucial time. So I anticipate that we could see some climate events or challenges around climate. And this is becoming that area of where we are being pushed to progress. And there's different ways that can happen. We've got the big people with lots of resources in terms of money that are really saying, okay, well, let's go into space. Let's just find another planet with lots of resources, because we're getting near the end of what we can use here on Earth. And so we need to really explore ways of where we can get more resources and perhaps colonize just Saturn space. But is that not just simply repeating the same old cycles of our way of life, the way of our social organization being about exploitation of the natural world? Is that really the way that we want to use this incredible technology that we have, that can actually put us into space, that can make all of these things happen? Or do we want to say, do you know what, actually, let's not give up on Gaia. Yeah, let's not leave her behind. I think this will be a part of the Venus-Mars stuff. Let's not just throw her aside with everything that she's given us. Let's not just throw her on the scrap heap and say, sod it, we'll just go and live on Mars and carry on as we were. And then when we've destroyed Mars, what happens then and then and then? You know, we're really at this point in time, and it's going to require us to do some personal, to act, to behave in ways that support that which is outside of ourselves, essentially. So just my thoughts on how I am experiencing the messages of this time. I hope it's been useful to you as always. That's my greatest wish, is that the way that I interpret the planets, because there is no set, solid, concrete way that these things are going to show up. There's a range of potentialities, and I act as an interpreter of the skies. I hope it's useful to you, and I hope through the way that I express this to you, you're able to come up with your own. That's the real ultimate goal for me, that you can understand these and start to come up with your own ideas around how this is showing up, your own observations, and really engage with astrology and how it affects life here on Earth. If it has some value to you, even if it's just entertaining, please give me a like, a love, a share. Do subscribe to my channel. It really, really helps. Above anything, subscribing to the channel helps it to come into the awareness and consciousness of other people, and therefore it really helps it to become a wisdom that can be used by the many and not the few, which is what I'm all about, and absolutely what Aquarius is all about. So I'll stop rambling. Lots of love. Have a beautiful week. Keep grounded, and try and capture the provocative energy to kind of redefine your determination to be a force for positive change. I'll see you next Monday. Lots of love until then. Bye for now.